1. Not any of these ones, but a 1-vote difference is what ended up creating the closest final voting result in BFDI history. Even after 5 years since the vote happened, with many other close votes or votes that had a larger impact on the show itself during that time, there's still frequent discussion and a sprinkle of drama just because of how close the numbers were. I mean, why wouldn't there be? If even 1 or 2 more people had voted for Taco, or changed their votes from Flower to someone else, the vote could have flipped or tied, which opens up a whole new can of worms alongside the typical questions. Why was the vote so close? Was it too close to count? And what would have happened if the vote was a tie? Now, I'm no shaman, so I can't definitively answer that last one, but I can at least wager a guess along with explaining those first two. So without further ado, let's weave through a time of doubt and tension, because this is the closest vote in BFDI history. BFB 21 is the episode that introduces this vote, and our main focus will be on the have-nots in what each of the 6 members get up to during its runtime. Wait, did I say 6? I really meant to say 5, because we open with the team facing an elimination, where loser gets curb-stomped by everyone else up for voting, and gets eliminated. Now, the fun song and massive gap in votes between loser and the rest of the team may make this elimination seem unimportant for this upcoming vote, but taking a gander at the numbers tells us a different story. Fiery and Woody are pretty ahead of the pack, but wow, is it a close race between Flower, Blocky, and Taco. A 3-vote gap and a 19-vote gap is all that splits them, which, while not crucial when the loser was 2,400 votes short, does show how things were and could continue to be tense between the 3 of them, or even one of the high rollers depending on how much screen time they'd get. A lack of attention was the reason behind loser's exit after all, along with his questionable rejoin, as people hoped he would get some development, but only getting like 3 lines in BFB 20 showed that probably wasn't going to happen. That's enough about loser though, as now the have-nots are down to 5 members going into the next contest. The challenge sees both teams split into the roles of gift givers or receivers. The givers need to go to Yellowface's warehouse and make like Beeba Doobie to find the perfect pair of gifts, and whichever team's receivers are happier with what they get, win. For the have-nots, the receivers are Woody and Flower, while the givers are Blocky, Taco, and Fiery. We get the most content from Taco and Blocky, with Taco criticizing how overly mean Blocky is to Woody, and Blocky getting defensive about it. Now, I'll explain how this whole conflict affects the vote later, but for now just know that this plotline doesn't really end up as a benefit for either of them. From here, we get a couple scenes showing what the receivers are up to, before the warehouse trio ends up settling on glitter and a cardboard box as their gifts. Flower loves the glitter, but getting a box just makes Woody feel like dead weight, and his dissatisfaction causes his team to lose. It seems like Blocky could be coming to a realization about his actions, but there's no more time left in the episode, so nothing conclusive happens between them yet. That's really all there is to the episode, as it is a typical post-split affair, but let's take a deeper look at how it impacts each character's chances of survival in the vote, while factoring in their already existent pros and cons. To start with the easiest character to explain, this episode puts Fiery in a position that isn't amazing, but also isn't bad. That may be surprising since I barely talked about him in my synopsis, but being a part of the Givers crew naturally gave him more screen time, even if all he does is some comedy. Getting the most votes in the team's elimination this episode is a really good sign, even if what he does in the episode proper wouldn't really gain him any new swing voters. What would draw new people in would be sympathy for Woody after getting mistreated and a terrible gift. He may have been a receiver and the technical reason his team lost, but his flare-up near the end is both memorable and understandable to some degree. Plus, he was already second safe behind Fiery without this moment, so it's easy to tell that he's in the best spot going into this vote. I guess from here I'll talk about Flower, who played a similar role to Fiery, in only being around for comedy. She's not bad at all this episode, but again, there's nothing she does that would really draw people in, and because she was a part of the close vote crew this episode, her spot doesn't look great unless her core fans hold strong. That leaves us with Blocky and Taco, who you'd think would be all good with how much we saw of them this episode, but here is where we can talk about why their plotline with Woody doesn't really help them in the same way it benefits the Balsa. For Blocky, he does have all the bro voters on his side, and a character can thrive being mean and vote to save, but he didn't quite reach common ground with Woody, and he was already in the bottom 2 in BFB 19. It's for sure a knock against him, but when factoring in the big rise in votes he got from BFB 19 to this episode, I think he rounds out to being in a bit better of a spot than Flower, and our last character entangled in this vote, Taco. She's the most important character to go over for a few reasons, but one of them has to be her shifting popularity. Going into BFB post-split, she was very well liked, being a rootable underdog in her arc with Book that earned her 4th place in the BFB 13 popularity poll with 1,637 votes. She'd be a true contender in the game if the split never happened, but losing all her main dynamics through the Have-Cots not having any of her former teammates meant that she needed something new and good to maintain her momentum. Keyword there is good, because while I think Taco as a character overall is okay, she does have some problems in post-split. In her conflict with Blocky, she's right about how he's being mean to Woody, but the way she communicates to him, and really everyone she talks to in post-split, can feel a little condescending. She's meant to play the comedic role of a straight woman, but the way most of her banter is written sounds more like she's complaining or irritated with whoever she's talking to. That's not to say that she has no good dynamics, as I actually like her involvement with the announcer in BFB 29, but looking between episodes 17 to 21, she was sloping downwards, and it put her in a position that, while not quite doomed, was still questionable. That's everyone up for voting, and after my overviews, I think you can see the cause of why this vote was so close. Woody and maybe Fiery seemed okay, but nothing really turned the tide of battle in favor of any of the 3 who were really close in votes this episode. Each of them had a unique set of pros and cons, and while you could say that Flower was at the biggest disadvantage, everyone including her had a lot of dedicated fans, which made the final results a true toss-up. So with all the cards laid out, let's get into the vote itself. BFB 22 starts with some setup that doesn't really matter before 4 starts the elimination by announcing everyone got at least 10,000 votes. That's a lot, and it shows once again how everyone left on the have-nots had a horde of fans, with Woody having the most fans, getting 14,450 votes. From here, 4 reveals that everyone else got in a crazy vote battle, evident by these results, and especially by the unofficial tracking being too close to call. There was no way of telling which of the 4 would be eliminated before the episode came out, making these results quite intense. The first to survive the battle was Blocky at 10,735 votes, followed by Fiery at 10,674, leaving Flower and Taco in the bottom 2. This is where we get the reveal that only 1 vote separates who is safe and who is out, and with 10,565 votes, Taco falls just short of the 10,566 votes Flower got, sealing her fate and sending her ass to the BRB. That's how it all went down, but even with the dust settled, the closeness of it all may still be hard to believe. It was 1 vote after all, yet the numbers can be rationalized a bit when considering how voting worked in BFB. I talked about it a bit in my 2 votes that changed everything vid, with how voting in the comments allowed people to track the results in unofficial ways, and that accursed knowledge led to lots of rallying and potential botting, so while crazy, a 1 vote gap was possible, and frankly inevitable in a show that revolves around viewer voting. But just because it was possible didn't mean this vote was free of controversy, as there was quite an uproar at the time, and still murmurs of bitterness even now. The first bit of drama comes simply from the nature of elimination. Everyone got over 10,000 votes, so even with Taco's recent polarization, there were still at least 10,000 people who supported her that were now upset that she was a gone girl. The sorrow was only boosted by the single vote difference, an outcome where even if a single Taco voter told a friend to vote for her too, she could have maybe survived, which is crazy to think about. This kind of drama is expected with any elimination though, but what isn't always brought up are the prospects that she was rigged out of the game, or that a one vote difference is too close to count. Starting with the rigging suspicion, the nonsense mystery grew from a mix of how close the vote was, a fake Discord thing, and some different drama with how people think the season was biased towards a Flower win. Now, two of those points don't have any proof, but let's take a look at that bias one real quick. You see, after the merge, Flower ends up going on a pretty crazy immunity run, and is only up for voting in 3 episodes before the finale, while having a solid redemption storyline. This has led to the argument that the writers were pushing for a Flower win, and that in turn they rigged this elimination for Flower to survive. This theory honestly has some ground to stand on. However, the segue into this elimination being rigged for Flower doesn't connect at all. For one, the big pieces of evidence that a Flower win was being pushed don't start until after this elimination, but also the reality is that I just don't believe Jacknjellify would rig any votes, because if they did, there are many eliminations that simply wouldn't have happened. Hell, at this point in the season, I'd argue that Taco had more of a plot reason to survive over Flower with her bonds with Blocky and Woody, yet she was still eliminated even if it was by the closest of margins. Those margins actually bring us to the too close to count argument, which is only really based on how fan tracking isn't always accurate, and it crumbles like cookie with the ironcladness of the square bracket system. Using YouTube Studio, YouTubers, like myself, can filter the comments for specific words of any video they've uploaded, which is a much more reliable system than just going into the comments. The exact process J&J uses likely has a lot of collaboration and triple checking to make sure it's all correct, especially in a situation with numbers as close as these ones. Now those were the heavy hitters in terms of drama, but before I start tying everything together, seeing how close this vote was got me thinking about how BFDI would handle a tie vote. Think about it. If Taco did get one more vote and tied with Flower, would they both be eliminated? Would they both be safe? Would their previous votes to save be added to their current vote? Could there be an in-universe tiebreaker like BFDI 18? Or would there be a bonus revote between only the two of them? In my opinion, I think that last option would be the most interesting nowadays, through giving both tied characters one more episode to shine, before going against only each other through a bonus option in the Google Form style of voting Teapot has. Regarding this vote though, even if it was a tie or flipped outcome, the already shown closeness of the vote guaranteed that people would be shocked or upset no matter what happened. That's really what the legacy of this vote comes down to, not just the closeness, but how a voting war this big was one of the first of its kind. Ruby vs. Gelatin in BFB 20 was also tight, but it was simply a duel and not a death match between 4 titans that each had support that pierced 10,000. It was an early flash of how heated voting to save could get, and formed a metaphorical runway for many more contentious votes and changes in the future. Some votes in the past 5 years have gotten close to the one-person gap, but given how it's been so long, and that the current voting systems have prevented any major clashes of clans, the prospect of another really close vote, and hazy mirages of whatever the hell would happen in a tie, remain up in the air. If anything, the unlikeliness of a vote like this happening again has only cemented the fame and infamy of this elimination, leaving it a memory that will continue to be discussed for years to come. That's all I gotta say. If you haven't, please subscribe, like, hype, share, hit that bell, comment if you have any thoughts, and thank you for watching.